So today, 3 o'clock, I call this meeting to order of the Purchasing 2002 Financial Management and 2012 Financial Management Committee agenda. So one of the items will be to discuss our name today, because it's rather long. So I call this meeting to order at 3 o'clock. Acknowledging that we have quorum, we have 4 of our 7 members missing. Dr. Langford, Mary Isabel, and Mr. Ellis. But we do have quorum. So I call it to order. Bob, would you give us the invocation?
Lord, we're grateful for our life, for our welfare, for the blessings that you give us each and every day, especially your Son, who gave his life that we might have eternal life. And as we do the things that are necessary for this county, may we be of the same mindset that your Son was here upon this earth. Be the servant that we should be and put all selfishness aside. We're always grateful for the fact that we have life in you. We have all the things that are necessary. Help us to use the wisdom from above to understand what is necessary for this county, that we are able to take care of the welfare of the citizens for this county and be able to discern that right from wrong. We ask this in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Agenda approved. Recognition of the public, we have none today. Approval of the minutes. We have the December 12th minutes in front of us,
So moved.
Second.
and I will abstain. I wasn't here. Oh, I cannot. I will approve in form, because we need 4 votes, because we're just making quorum, gentlemen. So all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Minutes approved. Report of the committee chairman. I do not have anything to report other than the items that we're going to discuss. I would like to just briefly mention and ask, as I was reading the title of our agenda, that were the 2002 Financial Management and the 2012 Financial Management Committee. Why are we both?
Until the 12's completely implemented, you're both.
Very good.
Probably some other ones.
And we're probably some other committees also. And we're the investment committee, the purchasing committee. Which other one am I
The act
missing?
repeals the other ones once you completely implemented it. So it's not completely implemented.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Report of the law director. He's not present. Does anyone know if law wanted to come? Oh, there he is.
I think he wants to speak under my report some.
Okay. We were just at your report of the law director.
Everything's great. World's a wonderful place.
So I'm glad you could be here.
Anything else?
Do you have some, would you like to speak under the finance director, or do you have something under your position?
About Title VI, we need to.
My biggest concern right now is, as Mr. Long pointed out, Title VI. That's really going to give us some problems, and I don't
Okay.
believe that Mr. Schoaf really picked up on the urgency, other than the fact it was a man-hour or a labor increase as far as an employee. And to be perfectly honest, if it gets shoved in either one of our directions, there's no way it can be handled
I understand.
properly, much less handled at all, unless an employee's dedicated to this. And I believe between Mr. Long and myself, I'm of the opinion, not to pass the buck, that he needs help more than I do. I'm still weighing out. I just got handed probation, so I'm still working my way through probation department to figure out what kind of needs I have there. So I think he's in better need of it, and I would be implementing a program from the very beginning, and he's got some a head start, as it were, in this. But that's all I have to report that's of urgency.
Very good. We will pick up that topic some more in just a moment, after our trustee speaks on the report of the trustee.
Okay. So far, we have collected about a little over 74% for 2024, which is just a percentage lower than for 2023, yet we have 2,200 more parcels this year. So I think that's really good. I think we're doing well on our collections at this point. Half of Sumner County waits till the end of February to mail their payments. So we get a bunch of the payments in March that are postmarked, so they're not late. So at the end of March, I'll have great totals.
Excellent. When do the mortgage companies send in? Are they already in?
Most of them are already in. We have a few stragglers that come after the first of the year, but most of them try to pay by the end of
Yes.
December.
Okay. So you're pleased with collections?
Yes.
Excellent.
So Cindy, let me ask you on the report itself, we've got 3, November, December, and January on the balance sheet. And this is probably an easy answer for either you or David. On the general purpose school funds, in November, we were at 108 million. It went up to 147, stayed pretty consistent at 153 for January. Where did that money come from?
Taxes, property taxes.
Property tax.
We start collecting in October.
It's really in November.
So it's just an
November.
allocation down to the school. Okay.
November, December is your bigger, January.
Gotcha.
And then you'll start going back off after March, big time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
With that comment that they'll be going down big time, we're okay with our cash flows while we're on, trustee. I just want to make sure you don't anticipate any problems in the cash flow for the
No,
year.
what I'm saying is your property tax is predominantly collected before it becomes delinquent.
Right.
So March forward, you're gonna be going down, down, down. All the way back to next November.
Yes.
There'll be
I just
some-
wanted everyone to hear that, since you said they'd be going down, that we're good on cash flow.
But that's just the normal pattern to see those ups and downs.
Thank you.
And we monitor those regularly.
And David gives me a head up when it's time to make our debt payments. So
Move them around.
make sure we have liquidity to take care of those.
Excellent. Any other investment questions at this time? Okay.
You skipped the mayor's report.
That's because I was just going to go back to
Oh,
it.
okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
since
Yeah, we
he
were
was
just
here.
making sure.
Yes, yes. So without objection.
I've got one for law director. We had talked in the last meeting about me looking at previous statutes or current statutes about a charter for the investment committee. If one existed way back when, that still is on the books that we just don't know about. And I think you had agreed to research that between meetings.
Charter on this specific committee?
I think you mean resolution.
A resolution.
Resolution.
Yeah.
Oh, resolution. I'll be honest with you, I don't recall what the outcome of that was. It's been so long since we've met, I'll have to, can I just email you, email the
Sure.
committee that?
Yeah.
I'll get that email to you.
As far as I can recollect, we don't have one right now. There was a discussion of an official investment committee when there was the $30 million hospital settlement. We spent several months through subcommittees and determined, because you're limited to a percentage of your smallest fund's idle balance, that it was such a small percent that they didn't create an investment committee at the time. Unless there was something before my time, there's not been one that I'm aware of. But we can get our county clerk's office to look.
Yeah, and if there's some kind of best practice the state recommends that meet statutory requirements, I mean, investment committee charters can be very long, they can be very short. I'm just trying to make sure we get it right.
So you mean a policy and a resolution?
Yes.
I think I may have one.
Okay. So I guess, I don't know if we want to make a resolution, but David's going to research it between meetings and come back with
And I'll get with Mr. Long as well, because I'll need that too, in case any decisions are made to revamp it, so that I can be ahead of the game on that.
And I do think we are waiting back from the Committee on Committees about appointing, I don't know if it's the chairman of this investment committee or the members itself. I'm a little fuzzy on which we're trying to accomplish by doing that. I was understanding this committee could serve as investment committee. Amongst us, we could pick a chairman, but I may be wrong on that.
I think he was wanting to go back under the general law because it had some language about protection to protect the committee.
Okay.
Because the other one, the 2012 Act doesn't mention it, but the other one basically gives you, I guess a better word, holds you harmless for honest mistakes. So I think that was the consensus that you guys had at the time, was to send it on to the committee.
Okay.
I think the recommendation is for this committee to serve as the investment committee.
Okay.
Unless I'm wrong, and somebody can look back at the minutes. but I
Did
think
we acted on that? I mean, I think we had a resolution we voted for that.
I think
so.
you guys voted to send the committee on committees to recommend yourself as an investment
Okay.
committee.
And Terry, we can work offline, but I just think we need to get Chrissy focused on this from the Committee on Committees, if we can get the committees or the members actually
And
nominated.
till that time, if I'm not mistaken, that responsibility falls under this committee as a whole. So,
Yeah, I think it's
any
determining
type of-
how best to do the committee meetings. Do we combine it into this meeting, or do we have a standalone investment committee
committee to
meeting?
focus.
And with a smaller group amongst us that meets and reports back to this committee. So I think those are the few things we've got to sort out.
I will put it on old business next time, and we'll come back with
Okay,
a path forward.
great.
Anyone else has any trustee type of items? Without objections, I'm going to fall back to asking the mayor if he has a report for the committee.
No report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We move forward to the report of the finance director.
I have an updated implementation plan. Not a lot's changed since last month. We've been training and moving along, but our big issue, we've got just like a lot of the employers at large, your average length of employees has significantly decreased. So we've spent more and more time training. The way we've tried to combat that is actually, increasing or modifying our SOPs to be more descriptive. However, at this point, just because of the growth of the county and the workload and the number of overtime hours, we've kind of bogged down on all those projects right now. And that's why next year through the budget process, we're requesting actually an additional accountant and as discussed under my report on the next items, a Title VI/FMLA coordinator, because that's a new process which we don't believe has been handled entirely the way it should be, either one of them. But that's the end of the item A unless anybody's got questions.
So that would be adding a person in the fall?
After budget, like July.
Okay.
And I have a whole list of things that we need them to work on right now.
I
We've
thought
got
we had an
a
available body somewhere else, or at least half of an FTE that we were going to move.
We
over.
moved all those to payroll, and we've been training the employees right now. We're hoping when we drop this contract this month to utilize part of that to actually start moving forward with the Kronos implementation for two large departments, and I've discussed that back under Kronos in a little more detail. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Of the 30% that still have not fallen under the Act, Financial Management Act, what progress has been made?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We've got the bid out. We wanted to, this is the first meeting we've had to discuss of actually awarding the bid to start automating the Kronos systems. There's a lot of work involved in actually automating that, and there's a lot of little issues, and I can discuss several of those.
And I would like to hold that until
Kronos.
Sheriff Craddock gets here, because we've discussed a couple of pieces of that, and it'll all work in together.
It's under Kronos. I've got several discussions of where we're at. And we are making progress. The big one's change management. Got to realize these employees filled out Excel sheets and we're done, not necessarily electronically or correctly. They've got to be able to approve, is that the word I'm hunting for? Them and their supervisor approve the correct hours for us to upload. That's the issues we've got with the large departments. The smaller departments, several of them still we need to configure. And we also have the issue of where employees are paid in advance. That's an issue. anytime you try to automate something, that's gonna create issues, and we need to, that's another item to deal with. But item B and C are kind of together, and item B, I've actually got, Scott here, and I think several of you have met him. He's the, I guess, grant accountant / project manager through the finance department. He's been through a few trainings, Title VI, but Title VI involves a lot of issues with, we've got to do it for our grants, but also through payroll, we probably need to be doing a few additional things that's never really been done either. And he can kind of discuss the training. What the state alluded to him was generally most of the Title VI is done through an HR department, and usually they have one or more FTEs doing it. I think Davidson has a full-time department. We think here probably around half to 3/4 of FTE could do it correctly. But right now, we can't find documentation for some of the stuff. We can find boxes checked. That's kind of as far as I'm going on it right now. Maybe Scott found something different.
I have a quick question. Does the Title VI involve the Family Medical Leave Act? Is
No.
that under that, or that's
No,
separate?
That's items, that's the next
Okay.
item.
That's fine. I just wanted to.
They're two separate items, but, and I've got actually an email here to discuss the items we're running into with FMLA. As the county gets larger, it just gets more pervasive on both of them. And the Title VI, that's just a few things on the state website.
When you tell us about the Title VI, I'm interested in the legal issues and how we might get in trouble if we're not covering them. So when you summarize it, could you hit those harder for me?
Yeah. The biggest thing is like, so for Title VI, it's basically like our non-discrimination against anybody. This is all, so for us that really dug into it when we started, it was based off of the grants. Well, it was discovered it was much more than just our grants that were affected by it. So, our employment practices, we have to be following that as well because we're funded by funded by federal and state. So if we aren't following this, we're going to we could potentially see significant lawsuits based on discrimination. This person's supposed to be taking complaints and be available pretty much all the time. They do all the investigations. They report it to the state. They're supposed to be reporting annual reports to multiple agencies throughout the state, and that's not only just for the grant side. So each grant, depending on the stipulations, you have to provide all of those surveys and self-assessments on top of your yearlies. And then I'll have to dig more into the HR side of things, because I haven't dug into that very far yet. But it looks like to us, it was just self-assessments were done to appease the grant side of things. It was a checkbox. There's supposed to be all kinds of signage across all county buildings, not just this county building. It's supposed to be everywhere, and it's not only including like discrimination towards race, color, ethnicity, disabled, anything that you can think of is what this covers. It's not just going to affect our grant system, it's going to affect us as a county.
So what I'm saying, we need at least 3/4 of a full-time, competent, generally it's done by HR. I'm not saying we need an HR department. I'm not saying for this one function, but I am saying that we need to set it up properly for the complaint and all the mechanisms. And by my best estimate, it's going to take at least 3/4 of an employee to do it properly. To maybe the full person, but the reason I put FMLA under, we have some issues, and my anticipation is if it does not take a full-time employee, they can work on the FMLA issues across the county.
If I could add to that, and this doesn't apply just to the county, I believe on my research, it could apply to third-party contractors, vendors.
Saw that.
I mean, it goes deeper than what we do. We've got to make sure the people we're using are doing it too.
Yeah, if we're using certain grants, they've got to
I saw that.
fill out drug-free.
How do we monitor that? I
We
mean,
make
that's
them fill out forms and make sure they're not in compliance. We've done a lot of it. The big one that's lacking that I know of right now is we do not have a formal complaint procedure. And we also need a way to track complaints and some of the other demographics. We gather them, but I'm not sure they're necessarily gathered to the extent they should be. We just started digging into it, and it's a large process on top of all the other backlog processes. So right now, I've put some limited resources, put some with Scott, me looking at it some, and I think Eric's been looking at some. But what I'm saying, we need a good, probably our best bet would be to put somebody in finance next year. I go out and recruit somebody from somebody else's HR department. Would be our quickest way, and then we basically start grabbing their policies. Otherwise, we'll be working a lot from the ground up.
And one of the big issues we're gonna run into in the short term is that Tennessee's training system runs through TDOT's training. You cannot attend TDOT's training unless you're the appointed coordinator.
We appointed one in the past, but they weren't necessarily there for complaints for employees and vendors. And the whole mechanism doesn't look like it was completely or adequately set up over in the county since the county's been here, that we can tell. Just enough to skim by.
Do we have any vacant positions sitting in other departments that budget can move over?
That would be, a lot of them would be questions of statutory positions and people have frictional vacancies, but long-term vacancies, no.
If you could just look through that and see, because right now, what we're talking about, if this all was to go smoothly and what you're saying, we're still looking at August or September, and then we have a lot of workload, and we're not up and running with this thing for a year.
Right now, we could do something in the interim. I mean, we've got to have somebody at least interim handling it to do TDOT. We're gonna start losing grants in the short order very quickly, and probably, I guess, our first one may be the litter grant. Would it fall into that?
I'd have to look.
We'd have to look and see, but we've got several reoccurring grants that we have to look at rather quickly. So, as we're saying, we've handled one temporarily, the TDEC.
Yeah, our TDEC one is fine for right now.
And
I
we're
was
moving
able to
forward.
do that training, so I have my certificate for the TDEC, but I don't have the official TDOT certification.
And we are gonna put in all the bid requirements and require that, because we have been doing that.
Correct.
Because we're running a SWIG project
Yep.
right now, and we're doing subrecipient monitoring, because we've run into some issues with some of our subrecipients. But we are doing everything we can, but the complete process at all haste needs to be set up completely.
Can I just ask, can you make Scott your certified person for now? I mean, I know he's doing the grant work, but if
The problem
that
is-
makes him a good trainer.
Right now, we're trying to finish up all the projects that he inherited, and they're like massive.
But I don't wanna
What
lose the
we're running
grants.
into with stuff going on.
Don't wanna lose those grants.
We're doing grants, and we're handling those right now, the ones we can. As we're saying, we've already handled TDEC, and we're actually applied for additional money on the SWIG. Looks very promising. So we are moving along, and if we run into an urgency for the TDOT, then we'll start trying to look at it. But right now, every time we're pulling resources, all we're doing is just shuffling something from something else, and we're getting a longer and longer backlog, and we're running more and more overtime. And the same thing right now, several of our trained staff members are going to be very hard to replace if we keep going down the road.
So if you
That's
get
kinda where we're going.
up against the wall and you see that we've got to have a certified hired person, as Scott is explaining to us, what do you need from the committee structure? I don't want it to feel like, third Thursday or something, and there's no more committees, and you've got to make him the certified person. Because we got to have the training to keep the $50,000 grant on Monday or something.
The same thing, if your grant's going to be approved, it's going to go through county commission for appropriations and approval of the grant, so they can all be done at the same time. The grant should be approved by the commission. So that's what we're trying to follow it right now. We've not had a person actually appointed that for what now, Eric? 4 or 5 months, 6?
I would say conservatively 6.
And last time they just appointed somebody to it, and they did part of the stuff. And I really hate to go down that road knowing it's under me, and I don't have a good feeling it's being done correctly. It creates an uncomfortable level for me if I think it's not being done appropriately.
But
Appoint the
here's
person.
the thing, I'm a big policy guy because that's the quickest way for me to get you out of a lawsuit.
Any policies?
It's not, do I remember what I did at that time? I can go back and say, this is how I always do it. So this is obviously how I did it. So if we don't get a policy going on this sooner rather than later, we're gonna keep playing this putting the brightest fire out first. and it's gonna come back to bite us.
Why don't, next month I have got to go out some of the websites, because we were looking at that earlier, some of them more advertised, like say Williamson, see if we can find some Title VI policies that's on their site. Me and him spent a little time evaluating and bringing back to the committee to look at. I think that'd be the first step before we even start, because right now we're starting budget season. We're generally frowned upon to ask for people in the middle of the year, so if all possible, it'd be something to wait for the next budget year.
I'm not frowning on it. It sounds like we have a need for it.
There's a need, but the question is, I think we need to look at the policy before we look at bringing in the FTE first. And if need be, we can temporarily, I guess, appoint somebody for the position, but my question is, they're not taking complaints and doing things as the position requires. That's what my concern is.
Well,
So, let me
that's a
ask you-
catch-22 there, though, is you wanna bring in a good person to help create the policy, but then you wanna create the policy to find the person you want. So I guess the decision to make is, which way do you wanna attack this?
You go to policy first. I mean, that, the organization's gotta have a policy whether they got the people or not. I mean,
Just don't adopt it, you get to.
right, well, no, I understand, but I mean, you can't push a horse unless you've got a rider. I mean, so you gotta get the policy first. Eric, question for you. Do we have a legal resource that we could use, or are there any policies that we could purchase that are kind of pressure tested that versus just picking them off of different websites?
The only way I've been able to do this that's got any real-time benefit to it is to pick them from other counties that seem to know what they're doing. And that could even range from what department it is I'm trying to find some policy on. So that's how I've been attacking it. Whether there's a third-party outlet out there where you can purchase or have them help create a policy, I do not know.
And there's quite a bit of resources on the state website as far as Title VI.
Yeah.
A lot of it leans heavily toward the grants and the vendors. The thing is, we also need to look and make sure how it's gonna affect payroll. That's why when he started talking, it's mainly an HR function. We do collect some demographical information and do a few things. My question is, do we need to do more? Ms. Norfleet proposed doing some additional earlier, but we had some legal concerns of what she was proposing, was it a couple months back?
Yeah.
So legal had concerns with them. So I think right now the best thing would be, we've got this for everybody to kind of digest, and then we can look on the websites, we can actually call and find out, like in Williamson County, who's doing Title VI, what kind of policies they have, and just get like a short summary for the committee to look at. It's probably our.
So go back to your point. I mean, what's easier to defend in the lawsuit? That you have a policy, you haven't implemented it, or you haven't monitored it, or you don't have policy at all?
Oh, if you know what you should have done, that's gonna be worse.
That's
on
where
you.
I'm going. I know the FTE's on a separate lane, I get that.
We got, if
We got
not
to identify
having
the
the
policy.
policy, just to
Yeah.
put it simply, is I can plead ignorance then. But if I've got a policy, but I'm just not working within it, I'm setting myself up for
Yeah.
trouble.
That's my big thing, is I think develop the policy and then we figure out what we need. As soon as you adopt the policy, we already have the boots on the ground to implement the policy. I think that's the safest move, and that's the same thing he says.
I don't know why you can't do
There's
both.
nothing
I mean,
wrong with
can't we walk, chew gum at the same time? Can't we develop a policy and be looking for a resource to implement it?
I'm with,
The problem is we will need funding for that. I mean, I'd have to advertise for a position.
Let's say that you get the funding in July,
We'll advertise.
and let's have a policy in place by July 1. And then that way you can hit the ground running and say, hey, this is our policy, can you implement this? Can you monitor this?
If the committees will entertain that as a work in progress, knowing that if there is the employee need, I don't see a problem with that at all. My
Okay.
biggest hurdle's been expressing the fact that there was an employee need.
Yeah.
And it's kept pushing me towards having to create the whole policy to prove my point. So that puts us further behind on getting the thing up to speed. But it's however you all want to do it. I encourage attacking it from both ends.
Well, I think we've got to put it out there and work towards a goal here. And I would make a resolution that at July 1, we have a policy in place and vetted through this committee. And then get your money for the budget and move forward. But just to wait until we get a body to fund the policy, no, I don't think that's a wise move. So I'm making that resolution to say by July 1, we have a policy in place that's been vetted through this committee.
I'll second.
I'd like to just add or amend to that, or sooner, or sooner.
Thing is, we're in budget cycles.
Well, I
I
mean,
know.
yeah,
Pretty
it's all this,
difficult.
it's either you're an audit or you're in budget. I mean, so.
Yeah,
we-
it's hard.
Work's gotta get done
Right.
regardless. But I think that gives us a goal. He gets the funding, we get it vetted through this committee and other committees that we need to vet it through by July 1. I think that's reasonable, but if you want to amend and try something sooner, I would be.
As soon as possible. But we'll let that ride. All in favor? Aye. You vote on this. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We'll be looking for a policy by July 1. And can I ask you on that?
Not just a policy, but a policy that's been vetted through this committee. One is to say, I want it approved by July 1.
So it'll be on our agenda next time
Yeah.
as an old item to discuss progress.
The next item's FMLA.
Can I ask you just on that, though? I believe that in the committee structure this time around, it was in legislative that they knocked down the title.
But
Was
now I
it
think there's-
legislative or was it
I think it
budget
went to
last time?
legislative and it was discussed of who was gonna do it.
And they said no.
Who did?
I thought legislative did.
What
Said
are we
no.
talking about again, the Title VI?
The Title VI person, because
Budget's where it got,
I don't remember in budget. I thought,
It's not made it to budget yet.
no, I believe I was sitting in the back of the room. I'm not at the legislative table. So I just need to know what we're gonna do to educate them on this need. And I don't understand why it went to legislative instead of budget, so.
Because somebody needs to appoint or recommend a Title VI coordinator. it's gonna
We have to
take-
create a position.
Somebody's gonna have to take the complaints and deal with all the issues and
Well, I
monitor.
know, but through
Create
the
all
committee
this statistics
cycle,
that
does it
hasn't
need to go
happened.
to legislative again?
Not at this point, not until we're asking for somebody to be appointed. You've got to,
Okay.
one, we need a
That's my
position,
question.
a
Thank
policy,
you.
a position, and then an appointment.
Okay, thank you.
so how are we gonna handle that until then? I guess that's the question.
That's the question we've got right now. It's not been handled for
Do we keep kiting this until something presents itself? or-
Well, a moment ago, I recommended that we make Scott our Title VI coordinator until further notice.
I think we're gonna
Because
take
if
them
we
off projects
need-
if we do.
Well,
I mean, that's all we can really do at this point.
then we go back to budget and we ask for a resource now. I'm good for that.
Because right now we've got, that's what I was trying to say. We have a backlog and we got a list of stuff he's working on for projects right now.
Talk to,
Matt,
I mean, we have a need, we really have a need. And as Mr. Kerr said, the calendar moves and we're always busy.
oh yeah, it's true. I mean, that's the problem.
And I think we have legal risk. I think we have some legal risk that we've got to consider.
Yeah.
If we're not doing anything,
Bring
we
it
know
back to
it.
budget next
When we
time.
sat here in this committee and talked about it, we've got legal risk.
Yeah,
I think we'll need to motion that.
okay. To send it to budget?
Yep.
Can do that. I think it's a normal process, but yes. All in favor of sending this item to budget to get resources as soon as possible is my motion. Can I get a second?
Seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? You're abstaining? Okay. One abstention for,
No, I'm gonna say no.
okay. Do you have some, I mean, if we don't need to, please.
No, I just don't think it's necessary. I think it'd be absorbed within the department.
I don't think we have.
But that's just my position, but that's okay.
Well, we
Okay.
need
I mean, it
to line
matters.
is what I'm getting at.
Well, I was
Maybe
willing
point
to
to the
move
mayor's
up,
office.
transfer a position over
Which-
to it.
Which department are we looking
Or
to
maybe move
get
to the
that
mayor's
coming in?
office then.
Is it legal, finance, or is it
Could
a
be the mayor's office.
mayor's role?
Finance.
I don't know what's.
Finance does all HR.
Don't do HR, we do payroll.
Where would we absorb that role if we don't create a new one?
It's finance or legal.
Or mayor.
Yeah, or mayor.
And do you have a legal bandwidth to do that? No.
But if we got a head count, where would you want it? Is kind of the question I've got.
Well, from
And
a
it-
selfish perspective, finance, from a practical aspect, I still would lean towards finance, but any
Okay.
cleanup or lawsuits, obviously, they're gonna end up in my lap.
That's what I wanted.
And that's mine is what we've been doing in the past versus now. If we did it the way we did in the past, but we're looking at, we don't think it's all been done.
Well, I think Mayor stated his case, I don't think it's move on here, we got it approved, and I understand why you're doing it,
The other one is something that needs to be looked at in the long term is the FMLA policy, because it's very interpreted and done differently across departments. You have, family medical leave if you've been here a year, full-time. You're provided 12 weeks of basically job protection and insurance. We have some departments that will actually run out all their vacation sick and then do FMLA. Some will overlap, as the policy says, and then we find out. Some will try to do unpaid leave, but we've stopped that, I believe, most of the time.
If we know,
If
a
we
lot of
know.
times we don't know. 'Cause
But if you
unless
look,
they're in Chronos, we don't see.
but if you look at your health insurance policy, it says you have to be actively working, so that means you need to be paid sick, vacation, or on FMLA. And it's consistent, so we run into issues of, because of tracking, that we don't know they're on FMLA for the benefits. Or we have people that, as similar, if it's a married couple, when you do it for the birth of a child, it's 12 weeks total for both.
So legally, this would be a nightmare to defend for applying the rules differently by department. Am I stating that correctly?
It's gonna be a problem internally.
I think you need my question is, a lot of these individual policies have all addressed FMLA, but it's under a federal law and involves benefits. The question is, can you have a countywide FMLA, because it's been done all over the place. That's what we've run into right now.
It has been done all over the
It's
place.
done all
Well,
different, being
in
interpreted
each
different.
department, they're responsible for their own, or that's how it's been up until now. So we recently ran into one where we're all employed by Sumner County government. And so those in one department might not know that they're married to somebody in another department. And so they both applied for 12 weeks. And we're like, well, they're actually both hired and employed by Sumner County, so you have to share that 12 weeks.
Wouldn't that be a normal function of HR, though, to know the two
Mhm.
employees are inside an organization that would double up on?
Where we don't have HR, that's what we're running into.
But if you decentralize these policies, you're setting yourself up for failure.
We are decentralized.
It's never had
Yeah.
an HR department.
But there's certain legal confines with this policy, I would think. It doesn't matter if you tweak it here or there, it's gotta meet certain standards. So there's gonna be part of that that's just, we have to do by department. And then it's the administration of it, and then to me, on top of it, the monitoring of what we do and or legal risk or legal cases that come up. But to go out and do FMLA for each department separately, I just don't know if that's smart.
It's been going on for years.
If they are under Chronos and being monitored that way, but they're, say, an elected official's office,
Mhm.
now, you're saying this is gonna be a different policy,
They have different FMLA policies.
even though they're
different
under
policies.
Chronos?
Yeah, they have a personnel policy, but the question is, should it be one FMLA policy? Is that part of your personnel policy? And then, like we have the county main policy, and some of them are interpreting it different than the other ones are too. Like, does the sick and vacation overlap, which reads that way, or do you get 12 more weeks unpaid afterwards? And then the worst one, if they're not on Chronos, is tracking intermittent leave. Or having somebody to do it, it would be a full-time. But the thing we're running into is we're a large county, and as we're talking absorbing here, but if you look at the sizes of most counties, when they have HR departments, they have several staff members there that don't exist here. It's a big cost, so it needs to be dealt with one way or the other. It needs to be tracked and straightened out over time. So what's happened over the last several years, we've got larger and larger, these problems have got larger and larger.
Well,
So you're saying in an ideal world, you would, if you had bodies, you would make it one policy and enforce it. But you're saying because we don't have the head count to do that,
Or an HR
it
department.
takes strokes off of your daily work and adds it to the manager of that particular group or elected official to make that decision. I'm okay with it personally. I want something in place that covers Eric And from a legal perspective, we're doing nothing, that's not a good thing. If there are things in that policy or that law, Eric, that these are must, everybody has to follow these 5 principles. And then you manage it internally as long as you meet these 5 principles. I'm saying 5, could be 10, could be 2, I don't know. But we need to me, we need a nucleus, and then you go out from there. But ideally, I'd like to put it everybody under one, but we are not going to be able to get the head count to do that. And I still understand why that would be an additional head count to do that, but we can talk about that offline.
But generally, it's done by somebody in HR, and it is a full-time person.
Yeah.
There's no HR here, so.
Well, one, you're talking about development of a policy that covers everybody. And it would be developed by legal and hopefully approved by this committee or whomever. Then you would go to your managers and say, or elected officials, this is our new FMLA policy. Please put the procedures in place to comply. I don't know how that adds body count to an HR group.
If you're,
That
that
wouldn't,
won't,
if
but
you-
if you're tracking and doing it correctly, in other words, if they.
Well,
we get
you're talking
things-
about the back end. You're talking about tracking. I'm talking about
Right.
implementation.
The thing is, we get people down here on health insurance and suddenly they're unpaid. What are they on? That's where we're running into benefits, and it suddenly starts dragging out, and we find out, oh, this person has not been here for 4 weeks, and they've, been on the health insurance.
Or if, I guess some of the things that we've run into is, I don't know who is holding these directors accountable. We've had a few employees contact us saying, oh yeah, they gave me the FMLA paperwork to fill out, and then Amy, who's our benefits girl, she'll look and she said, you haven't even been here a year, you don't get it.
Yeah,
But yet this director gave them paperwork, so.
Well, let me
I
offer
guess
this
that's
up.
part of the
I don't want to
problem.
get hung up on this a little longer
Yeah.
than we have
Yeah,
to.
this isn't
No.
simply just one thing. You got OJI, you've got overtime,
Yeah,
you've got
you've got a
whether
lot of
you're
different things to-
exempt or non-exempt. It's a
Well,
litany of stuff.
Yeah, let me do this. I want to lean on your expertise to tell this committee what are the basic legal parameters that need to exist inside that policy.
And we're talking about FMLA
FMLA,
specifically.
right. And let's still, push to the 7-1 deadline. But this is going to be vetted out as we go down the path, just like Kronos has been vetted out. I mean, so this would be no different. But I don't know that we solved that today. I've got my own opinion. I can be swayed either way. But I'm just trying to get the thought out there. Let's move it forward instead of just talking about it. Let's do it. So I'll stop my questioning about it at this point. I think we've got a resolution that's been passed.
Can I ask the mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
with the FMLA, can you see any path forward that we could be centralized and take that in one spot and have, it's a big knowledge bank, I understand.
Yeah, it would require a person, I'm sure.
Can we,
I
do you think that
that's
would?
what finance is alluding to, that they would need somebody. Yeah, but we could have a policy that's countywide. I don't think
That's-
that would be a problem.
Would that be, yeah, with the department head, with the
Yeah,
different
I-
elected officials, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't think the elected officials would have a problem with the policy. Now, I would have to speak to them,
Yeah.
but I can venture a guess that not many of them are well-versed in that policy,
Mhm.
and they would love the guidance to make sure that they're operating within their parameters, so.
Yeah, so if we could address that first, if we could see a way forward to centralize our policy, to put FMLA in one spot.
Sure. I'll
And,
talk to
and
them.
we all know where we're gonna dump it at.
Problem we ended up with, and that's one I want to tell you about, was what she mentioned, if you caught that. We actually had somebody that put somebody on FMLA that wasn't qualified.
I
To
understand.
keep them on health, and then we end up with the issue, they're not technically qualified for health insurance, so it puts us in the spot of having to
Yeah,
figure
'cause
out.
we
I-
don't find out until after the
Yeah,
fact.
I understand.
And why
That's
they
why,
changed.
if, once we get it centralized, we get the policy tighter and can bring all of those questions together and then address getting the right resource in place and move forward. If you could get back to us
Be happy to by next month.
on,
or next
and then
meeting.
see if you could work, if legal and the mayor, if everybody could come up with a central policy that they're happy with, and we could vet it and move forward, that would be ideal.
Yeah, I'll be happy to review and share with the constitutional officers.
All right, I don't think that needs a motion, we're just gonna have it on old business.
And that is the end of my report.
move to old business. And you'll have to pardon me since I was not present last month, so I want to make sure that I don't skip some stuff. Information for employees
Can,
who paid current.
Before credit, you wanna
Yes.
move up?
Is he having to leave?
He's just using the restroom.
Okay,
When he
yeah.
comes back, we'll move up.
Yeah,
Motion
we'll
move
get
up.
him in and get him out. So when he comes back, we'll make a motion to move him up. Item A, in the meantime, information for employees who paid current.
Updated information. That's the updated numbers. The first number, if you look on page 120, is the exempt, including everybody, exempt and everybody. If you made up for that week of current, you know, the 1 week's about 305,000. If you remove the exempt department heads, 278. If you removed all exempt employees from it, it'd be 277.
So this issue has been, if I may speak to this issue's been here floating around. I'd like to just take a piece of this. I'd like to make a motion today that we stop paying people before they work their hours and go ahead and move their pay to after they've worked their hours, if that makes sense.
There'll be a whole week of gap in pay and about 100 and some people.
So moving from Thursday to Monday, because right now we pay on Thursday, and they still work, for some people, they're still working Thursday and Friday.
It'd still be an estimate, yeah.
So I'd like to make the motion that we don't pay people before they've worked their hours.
You've got to be really clear on that because there's a couple things. Sheriff, EMS, highway, they already
There's a
have,
lot.
they already have holdbacks.
So they work their hours, they stay where they're at.
And then the other ones, so if you move everybody to, say, Monday, then you're gonna move the sheriff's department, highway and all those.
Because theirs are set on there.
And I can kind of read you where everybody's paid. Let's just,
Yeah.
example, let's use June 30th. Your last payroll is June 19th of 2025, okay? On June 19th, 25, all your part-time will be actually paid in arrears. In other words, they're not, none of those are paid in advance. Your elected officials are paid on June 19th through June 30. County commission is paid, which are elected, but they're not countywide. They're paid on June 19th through June 30. EMS, sheriff, highway, health, and ECC all have a holdback, somewhere near a week, give or take. The general policy is going to be paid, this group here is paid on June 19th for all their hours full-time through June 20th, the following day. Includes planning, county attorney, elections, buildings, mayor, county buildings employees, IT, finance, library, soil, veterans, archives, some of the courts, assessors, magistrates, probation, EMA, and E911.
So,
The trustees paid on the 19th through the 22nd, and they have separate policies, but the deed, circuit, and clerk of master is also the same way. They're paid on the 19th.
so with that,
through
let
the
me interrupt you because we get that everybody is paid on a different work schedule.
Right.
Is there some way that, and I know that we've talked about this, and you say once we get it set up in the system, it just rolls. Can we not come up with a more standard week pay cycle than having 20 different pay cycles? Without disrupting everybody.
They've all got it in their personnel policy, so we're gonna have to deal with overtime and reset their weeks.
It's a big thing having 20 different pay
Yeah, tell me
cycles.
about it.
Yeah.
If we could, while we're talking about trying to centralize FMLA, if we could get together and just make our pay cycles the same. I understand that and we're gonna talk about the sheriff's office and EMS and their schedules in a moment with Kronos, but if we could, maybe we can't move those down to 1 week, but if we could move it down to 3 different pay cycles and then address what's going on. Is that possible? Again, it would
They'd have to
be
change
at the
their personnel
will
policies.
of the elected officials, but we've got, as he was reciting, 20 different pay cycles.
I'll be happy to discuss it with David, because I'm not aware of the different pay cycles, so I would have to be educated on it myself.
I was shocked. I'll just tell you, I looked at it a couple of months ago and I was shocked.
Yeah, I'll be happy to talk to David, maybe we can well, to be honest, I would probably, and I think David might agree with me on this, that we punt on this until after budget. I think, and then David and I can sit down and talk about these pay cycles. But I'd venture a guess that David's pretty swamped right now trying to get budget stuff.
That-
So
Oh, yeah.
I hate to
I
throw a
understand.
project on.
That and the holdbacks, we could throw those into next year, because when we start talking about the Kronos bids, I think there's a, work on the ones that already have the holdback first is the best way to do it, because it's gonna take a while. It'll get you into next year. There's really no need to tackle this in the middle of a budget cycle.
I was under the impression that we'd already moved some people to that.
It went to budget, and then they discussed it and sent it back here to determine which way to go. I mean, it never was determined. It went from here to budget, from budget back to here. Well, they sent it back to here for more work. You see, it has to work.
All right, so I'm okay, I would like to see a reduction of payment schedules. So I'm willing to wait, and nothing's happening, Kronos is not moving. And what we're gonna hear in just a moment when we hear from the sheriff, you'll see that Kronos may be taking a further step backwards, maybe. All right, so a motion to keep the payback and current employees on old business.
You don't need
Just leave it.
Just leave it there. Got it. All right. Email from Mr. Long.
That's the same thing, it's in relation to the
Right.
holdback.
Are we gonna get the sheriff to come and do his thing? so we
Yeah,
can-
actually, and because we want to hear from him before we go back to
Yeah.
item C also. So Sheriff Craddock, come and join us, if you would, sir. Can I have a motion to suspend to allow Sheriff Craddock to speak?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Just E2.
Yes. This is E2. We have Kronos bids recommended to move forward. But first, I'd like you to hear from Sheriff Craddock and some of the complexities they're encountering with Kronos.
Sorry, I had something in my eye when I was working on the West Coast. Kronos is adequate. It does what we've made it to do. Once I heard that financial management wanted to hear from us on Kronos and its implementation, I started going to some other law enforcement agencies around and seeing how they did it. When I went to Hendersonville and watched how they use power time, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, I was standing on the side of the road talking to a sergeant who pulled it up on his phone and showed me exactly how they do it, and I thought, that's the ticket. How do we get that? So then we got and sat down in a demo with Power Time. Power Time's parent company is NeoGov. They do government software. We already use it at the sheriff's office for several different things, our policy management, our FTO training. There's a couple other models that I'd like to have, we just don't have the money for right now. Power Time costs about $10,000 a year to start up. I asked some questions on the back end. They have a bridge or an API or an interface, however you want to call it, with UKG or Kronos, whichever is the new parent company. So we could literally go from Power Time into Kronos. That would keep it centralized with the finance department. It would make it much easier from a user perspective. We would have more control over it from the sheriff's office perspective. I told you all Kronos was working right. It's adequate. Power Time is definitely a step up from a law enforcement perspective. It's a software made for emergency services, made for 24-hour shifts, made for multiple different shifts within the same organization. I have 8s, 8.5s, 12s. I have divisions that want to go to 12s in the new budget year, and Annette can tell you, I'm probably the biggest thorn in her side because when time doesn't work, I just pick up a phone call, hey, can you help me with this? She's speaking one language, I'm speaking another language because I'm a cop and she's, you know what I mean? I do think it would be much simpler if the departments could pick the software that worked for them and make sure we had an API or an interface that made it work for her versus trying to make Kronos fit across the board. Kronos is great. My wife uses it at Vanderbilt. She doesn't have any of the problems that our users have. So if we could make the software work for us and increase efficiency and decrease all the user complaints that I hear, this is not a joke. Every other Monday morning, I text my staff, happy Monday, Kronos, and the groan's just rolling. We spend, and Annette knows, we spend most of payroll Mondays dealing with payroll issues.
No, the
That's not
technology
her
you're
fault.
talking about, that you spoke to the other.
Can you start over?
I said, the technology you're talking about, is it actually, you can use your iPhone and do it?
You can, and you can use your iPhone with Chronos. The problem that we're running into now is the multi-factor authentication that Chronos requires. That's not a Sumner County issue, that's a, UKG is the new parent company, right?
Yes.
It's a UKG issue. So that's not something we can fix here. But PowerTime takes your biometrics from your face or your passcode to your iPhone, and then you're logged into PowerTime as your multi-factor authentication, just like every other 22nd century mobile app, right? So it's definitely more efficient and more user-friendly. Because I'll tell you, I'm not the Chronos expert. And Ed'll tell you, I'm not the Chronos
It's
expert.
not.
But I had my captain and my lieutenant, who are very well versed in it, sit in the demo with PowerTime. And when they walked out of there, they were like, wow, that's what we need. That works for us. It's not a solution we're making work for the sheriff's office. It's a solution that literally works for the sheriff's office.
How much time do you think your department spends working through Chronos every Monday?
Well, it's Mondays, it's the Thursday before payroll. We have her go through and send out discrepancies with time cards. Because if she does it on Thursday, they work either Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. It's a lot.
You'd still have discrepancies you gotta work through regardless of whether you use Chronos or PowerTime, but just, is it labor intensive on Chronos from a user perspective?
From my perspective, it is labor intensive.
You have to be in front of a laptop or your iPad to do it, or can you do it on your phone, or?
You can do it from your phone or your laptop. Our problem most of the time is that people like to use their phone because of our security settings to use Citrix and go in. So obviously on your phone, it's not like a tablet, the screen's a little smaller. You know, I do it from my phone most of the time, but I'm paid for a schedule, and the people that report to me are paid for a schedule, so they're pretty easy to approve. I don't have to do all the manipulation that the other supervisors have to do.
And if I could step into one piece, and when we were discussing this earlier, the scheduling piece, could you use that for scheduling? And I'd like to loop that into where we've talked about EMS using their software. Is this the same? What I'd like to ideally see is if we could use the same software. I know that Sheriff Craddock is saying everybody could have whatever fits them the best, but if we could have a scheduling software that fits the multi-different shifts.
There's already, Chronos has one, and so there's an advanced one that EMS has right now.
So could whatever EMS, I know that there's a module that we talk.
Telestaff.
Telestaff. Is Telestaff something they could use?
Who?
The sheriff's
If they want
office?
to use it, I mean,
We
it's
don't have
gotta be
extra
configured.
cost.
It's extra cost, it's gotta be configured.
How much?
I don't know off the top of my
I
head.
can
I wasn't
say-
part of the telesales.
I can tell you
'Cause
that
it-
I've got the quote from PowerTime. It's about $6,500 startup and about $4,500 recurring for the sheriff's office.
Because to me, it sounds
That
like
includes a scheduling model.
Do they
they
handle
need,
maintenance requests and everything?
And Power FTO or Power Ready, Power DMS, we communicate with them a lot. In the past year, I've had one issue that took them about a month to fix. Not a huge issue, but, and honestly, we were trying to use their software for something it wasn't designed for, but it was cheaper for us to make it work, and they fixed it this week. So their customer service has been really good.
so to me, it sounds like that they need something like Telestaff is doing for EMS. But ideally, if we could use the same product, that would be
So
a
they
win,
belong
I
to
think.
UKG? What's that, they belong to UKG?
PowerTime? No, PowerTime belongs to NeoGov. And they have a scheduling module built into it, which our guys right now are doing Chronos, and they have a Google Sheet that they schedule people off and on, and holidays, and PTO, and all that kind of stuff. So having it all incorporated in one would be more efficient.
Do you know why they don't use Chronos for their scheduling?
I think when the consultants came and we started Chronos for scheduling, she told us it would be too difficult the way we did it. Don't quote me on that. That was when we did it at the Board of Education, the training in the classroom.
That was way before me.
Yes.
That's not what my consultant said.
I don't know why they told you that.
Yeah.
I'm
No.
quite certain.
I'm sorry.
And at
Sorry
that
if
point
they
in time,
don't
we were still
realize
going from 8.5 to 12, so.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea Chronos could do a scheduling model.
What do you think your transition time would be between Chronos and PowerTime if you made that move? Would it be relatively seamless, or do you think?
I think it would be relatively seamless. I think the biggest issue would be building a sandbox for them to play in to make sure the integration between PowerTime and UKG was seamless.
Just change management?
Right.
Okay.
I don't,
Yeah.
I don't want to set it up and we still have to do the spreadsheet that uploads into, I want it to be a seamless process for everybody.
The reason for the spreadsheet right now is it requires a sign off or approval, not a sign off, but approval from the employee and the department head. And they have like missed punches, and that's what the issue's going on right now. I don't see how power time, if they don't punch out or don't get approval, you're gonna have the same
Well, I'm just
issue.
curious how power time, what information it's sending to Kronos, because
Right.
Kronos is still gonna have your payrolls and whatever, how to
Right.
handle those hours.
The missed punches and
Vacations.
stuff is one of the main reasons I've asked to go pay from schedule.
Right.
Because the time clocks are extremely expensive, and I use this example all the time, it's the most real example I've got. Corrections officers are walking in the jail, standing at the time clock, a call comes over the radio for a fight in a jail pod, well, they're not standing there going to clock in. They're running to the fight. So if we just put them all on pay from schedule, and then anytime their time needed to be modified, they would send a request to their supervisors like our patrol officers do, I think the missed time punches errors go down, I mean, exponentially.
So that was a request from the sheriff's department before your time, they wanted the time clocks at the jail.
See, where I was going with my question about saving time is something too, right? And if you had a way to document the savings of time into the cost, then having a carve out for your group, EMS, others, is, something I think we could sell. And maybe you've got the 6,500 sitting in your budget, or 10 grand, whatever, 9 grand to do that now. But, I mean, I like what you're talking about. We have to be open-minded about Kronos. I've dealt with Kronos for 30, 40 years. It could be good, it could be bad. Having carve out for the sheriff's department, but, other areas, like you're in finance, or you're in payroll, you're in planning, you're in whatever. To me, I don't know if you'd find another carve out that just handles all folks in finance, or this to me seems like it's fairly unique and fairly successful way to do that because of the instability of your schedules and back and forth. I think we should strongly consider it. I do.
I've got two questions. First is, Eric, from a legal standpoint, it sounds like he's gonna be totally meeting all we need from the 2012 Financial Act, because it's all going into Kronos, right? So there's no, do you
Does it
foresee
have to go to
any?
the subcommittee?
It has to go to the
And
time.
I don't believe that act ever
Just
said how it
It
has
says
to
it has to be
there. It just has
standardized,
to
It
right?
has to be
there.
one
Yeah.
timekeeping system, is what it
Okay.
says.
Would
I
this,
think-
would this violate the?
I don't know,
one
according
timekeeping
to how it's
system?
timekeeping, I don't know.
Could someone read that section? Because I think that section says that finance has to use a centralized.
That's what I
system.
mean, no,
Right.
that was my
So as long as
question.
mine feeds in
It's on
finances.
it's on the front, it's on the definitions.
Okay.
It's the very front, it says a one timekeeping system. I read that part.
Well, if it integrates into Kronos, to me, it is standardized,
Right.
right? I mean,
The question is gonna be the same thing, you're gonna have to have, the issue we've got right now is whatever we upload is what it's gonna pay. So when it gets in there, if somebody's missed a punch, not changed a punch, or not got their changes in time, then we can't upload it. So if you got a system going into a system, you just create another level there.
so you're talking about the actual implementing of the technology. I think we're talking about the principle of being able to do
We're
it.
talking about the actual
Act, and I think the act would not prohibit you from doing this. We're talking about the back end of making it work.
If it's feeding into a timekeeping system from a front interface, then it's one timekeeping system. That's my question. I'm not sure if it's just an interface or a full-blown timekeeping system. I don't know. Because he's saying feed it back into Kronos, which is the timekeeping system, but if you're gonna have a timekeeping, feeding into a timekeeping, feeding into a payroll, you're gonna end up with a whole other level of problems.
So this is just a
You create a lot of
fancy,
new
this is a fancy,
problems.
fancy Excel spreadsheet in my mind that's
Yes.
organizing it
Which
to,
one?
to feed into the system. Power time.
Power time, which is, I mean, essentially what,
I'd be curious what they're sending to Kronos, like what theirs looks like, because like
I'll
tell
ask.
us that.
You said you could run them.
That was
you
one-
could run them in parallel.
I think so. And
Yeah.
that-
So we
to
could
me,
run
that
2
one-
months and see.
Yes.
Just
You
tell
have
us
to
that.
Matched up. This saved 80% of the time.
Telestaff feeds stuff to it right now, and that's one of the issues.
Well,
about
I mean-
FMS.
So that was question one. It seems like across that hurdle. Question two, as long as you've got money within your budget as a department head, I think you can just go do it, right? Is that
I'm just,
Mm.
I'm,
Fair.
my point
Yeah.
It
is,
don't violate the act, I don't know.
before you
Yeah,
get,
it's not.
before you get too far down the road, we wanna make sure that what Kronos requires, otherwise you're still gonna have problems with Kronos.
So we
With
asked
your-
that very
With your
specific question.
implementation and your
Yeah.
pay rules and all of
And
that.
I'm happy to get
Okay,
with you and see if we can get on a demo and
Yes.
make sure
Yes.
before we,
Could we
But-
do like at
Because-
least 3 months of parallel paths?
I'm sure we would have to
At that point, we
pay
would
for
probably-
3 months.
My thing is if
Do it,
it's
but-
just feeding like a timekeeping system and it's getting all the punches and stuff resolved, then what's Kronos doing? It's just taking the punches from you guys, it's already resolved and applying rules to it.
and that's
So
what
does the
I'm
other system
curious.
apply rules? What's each? I'm trying to figure out, because you don't want to.
He's not managing policies there, right?
That's what
I'm
Kronos
just
do
trying
have
to
a
organize
personal
the
So you're gonna
time.
manage policies in the.
Well, I
Like
mean,
Power Time doesn't say they make $10 an hour, Kronos does.
So Munis says that.
Munis does that.
Munis will take the hours
So,
and multiply by the rate.
Are like the pay policies and stuff in
There's
that
pay
timekeeping
policies.
system? Or is that timekeeping system just strictly,
I
they
don't-
work from 10 to 10, you know what
I
I
don't,
mean?
yeah, I don't have that answer.
So
And I'm
I'm
asking
sure I
all
can
this
get-
because telestaff, even though it is under that umbrella, you still have to set up Kronos to be able to take that information, and Kronos holds your pay rules, and that's the biggest issue that I have with the sheriff office. They have so many
Which is
different
exact verbiage
pay rules
here.
and accruals and all of that,
Okay,
and they're
here's-
always trying to improve things, which causes us more work. So I'm not,
Commissioner Brown's
Gotta
been
read out your
patient.
pen.
I want to try to read it to maybe what it says, but it's.
Can you let Mr. Brown go
One
first?
question here. Does this interface individually with Kronos, or does it go back to a batch under the sheriff's department and then it dumps into Kronos?
From my understanding, it interfaces with UKG.
Individually or as a batch?
What do you mean
Well,
individually?
they go files.
I'm saying each individual person doing their
It's
own
in all the
time
people and all
sheet,
their hours.
or
Yes.
does,
It would send the entire.
okay,
sheriff's
so it
office.
sends, so it goes back as a batch
Yes.
under the sheriff's department. Now, you were saying that if one was held out, that it would stop that dump into Kronos? Like somebody hadn't done their time sheet,
Somebody had done their time sheet. fixed it.
Oh,
it would stop the batch process?
I would assume so. How could you do a batch if one of them wasn't?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, so.
I think I can answer your question pretty closely. Earning records, and this is just the definition, means detailed records for all time worked, leave taken, and all balances maintained on a real-time basis exclusively by a comprehensive time and attendance system, which shall be used by all agencies of the county. The application must be fully integrated into the ERP, and that's what we're trying to do right now, and automated to us most extent possibly and comply with wage and hours. So if it dumped all the detailed hours worked, leave and everything by detail back into Kronos, then you're still gonna have a consolidated system. The question is, are we going to create, by trying to fix a problem versus, remove the time clocks over here, and are we gonna create a second layer that creates more problems, or are we just gonna get a better interface? I don't know.
I just think
It's something we need to
that's-
look at. We think-
Yeah, we-
Make it even a good interface and fix the whole.
We have to think outside the box, I believe, because how many years have we been not implementing Kronos?
Yeah.
12 years?
Well,
And if.
It sounds like a cheap, quick thing to test.
I mean, it goes to a lot of different things. It goes to efficiency, goes to morale, goes to a lot of different things. That if your folks like it and it works, and you have spent less time trying to deal with the complaints, then you're doing more work for.
I think a debt spends more time dealing with my complaints than anybody.
Well, I mean, it's
I-
just.
I
I
truly
just
think it will make my life easier subsequently, making her
I'm
life
just,
easier.
I wish I had more of me to go around so that I could see what
too.
exact problems that they're having, because I feel like maybe they just need to be retrained.
Well, and yes and no, right? From a theory standpoint, 100%. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But from an application standpoint, these guys are boots on the ground, cops and corrections officers.
Right.
They need a system that is stupid easy, so easy, they
And-
don't need to be retrained.
And
That-
especially if they're paid from schedule, if we're allowed to switch everybody to paid from schedule, I don't know what they're spending all their time doing in the time cards, I guess.
100%, which is why, like,
Yes, yes,
when can we get this done?
yes.
So that's
So-
what he's wanting to move all his employees paid from schedule, which I understand your jailers and patrol, but you're talking office staff too?
I want everybody, I don't want to have to deal with a time clock issue again, especially after I was told that replacing the time clock had to come out of my budget at $3,500.
I told you that.
I'm pretty sure it was financed last time. Because I asked for more time cards.
That must have been IT.
It might have been IT. I asked for more time cards, that I was told those had to come out of my budget. And then when the time clocks were down, I was told those had to come out of my budget. So
Time clocks historically had a line item for ERP equipment still.
Can we do this, I mean, just to kind of move this forward, I mean, I think we should think outside the box and consider you using this technology. I think we should understand, does it interface, and what are the mechanics to interface that software into Kronos, so it does meet kind of the definition of the 2012 Act, which I think we might be overreading it a little bit, but my guess is it would. And then come back maybe the next meeting and tell us how you propose we move forward on this in terms of, is there a cost to do what Colin said, that 2 or 3 month
right.
side-by-side parallel, what that cost would be? And if you've got it in your budget, that's fine, just articulate to our committee what that is. And let's look at a schedule, trying to get it done. That's what I would propose. I mean,
And
Could I interject?
sure.
Could we do pay from schedule and try that for a month before we go through?
I mean,
Because I do feel like that's gonna help my issues. I know you're one person, I know, I know.
That's kind of on the next one of the.
I mean,
proposed
if I could magically do it, then I would
Yeah, it's
say
a lot of
yes, as long as they all approve that you're allowed to do that. But I don't have my consultants in place yet, and we've got budget, and we've just got a lot of crap going on.
So I have a question though, back to, I alluded to it earlier, that EMS has the telestaff. If you could both use, and it sounds like they're using some, this pay per schedule, this is the first time I've heard, it sounds, I'm
It
neither
just means they don't
opposed.
have to punch.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
Schedules in there,
but
they
it
get
sounds
paid
like that's what
whether they're
EMS
there
is
or not.
doing over on telestaff. They're not.
No.
I thought their schedule rolled into the pay.
It does, but they have 24-hour rotating shifts, and when somebody misses, they've got to call out and find people on the shift and overlap them. The only reason they have telestaff is that they got 24 hours overlapping shifts all over the place.
Okay, so their
Nobody
shifts
else
are
uses it
different.
usually.
So
Yes.
they couldn't be, the sheriff's office and EMS could not use the same
If you want to pay for the
scheduling
seats.
interfaces.
If you want to pay for the seats, you're
It's
going to
probably a lot
probably
more expensive
run
than.
several $100,000 to set it up. and-
Telestaff is expensive.
Yes, and you're gonna run a monthly cost on it too, yeah. That's why we didn't set it up for everybody. Now, they do have a scheduling module in the sheriff's department. And that's one they could probably look at versus the sheets. I think at the time, because I was here back when we had we had an old system that was the sheriff's department, that was being demoed. They kept using it, all the lead balances was you here when we did the lead balances? Yeah, they got totally messed up, so we used the most conservative, probably gave people balance, it was so messed up. We came in and moved them over to Kronos because it suddenly was dying. So at the time, we may have said it's a rush to do it, and we didn't want, I don't know who told us not to use the scheduling module, but that may have been the reasoning at the time, because the system was dying. I think they called us one day and said their system was dying, I think Elaine did or somebody. It was before your time,
And-
so we
That
went like.
was BE.
No, we were like, our system's dying, we don't know what to do, we've got like 2 weeks, when's this gonna be, when could we, so what we did is we grabbed sheriff first and just started funneling, was you here when we started that? I think you were, weren't you, funneling all those lead balances in? I think you're the one doing it.
So
When
if
they went
that's
live?
not
Yeah.
gonna, that's not gonna help us
They had all
here
the lead
though.
balances from the old system.
The old system history isn't gonna help us.
No, but that's why the
But
quick
the
setup.
only reason I'm suggesting that we do the same system is because in the past, we've heard that our telestaff trained person left, and we have training issues to get back up to speed to run that. So from finance's point of view, if my finance person only had to know one interface system, that might be worth paying for. That's the reason I was trying to move both of you either one way or the other, and theirs isn't working right now. So if they could use power time and it was cheaper,
You have to reconfigure all Kronos for.
well, it's not working anyways, according to 2 months ago. And
It's-
the guy that programmed it wrong and has left the building. I think that's what I recall.
Yeah, But it's not the telestaff side, it's the Kronos side that is wrong with
Oh.
EMS. It is not set
Yeah,
up.
they
It's
reprogrammed
the
the work
side,
for
the
EMS.
parameters.
Yes.
I understand now. That's the only reason I was trying to shove you both towards the same software.
I'm happy to try it. Whatever.
So
I
it-
want-
can
I
y'all
want
like-
easy.
Telestaff
Easy equals
I know
efficient.
everybody's got plenty of time, we've heard that. So if y'all could just figure out you know, what these two systems offer, and if that might be a thing, because
Right.
I don't want you to have to know both.
Well,
Or-
because, I guess.
Financially, give us some numbers. And then I need time to think about the pay per schedule, it sounds like a great thing, but I'm sure there's some con to it, but I don't want to talk about that today.
I do.
He's been asking for a while, and I've asked David multiple times, we just haven't.
We haven't found the time to do that.
Yeah.
So can we put that and give us all time to research that? And
Sure. I got plenty of time.
I mean, you're not gonna get anywhere this week anyways, but could you come back with like some cost? And if it will,
Cost for power time and the interface or the API.
the
with
cost, yeah.
Chronos.
And then if it will upload,
Yeah, and if it's gonna cause Chronos to need to be updated.
Yes.
Some way.
I'll tell you what, I'll get
if
the
it's
cost.
possible, how much it'll cost, and can you be friends with EMS? That's my
I'll
request,
get
and in the
cost.
meantime,
I'll work
I'll
with
figure
John
out
Michael,
paper
and I'll call
schedule.
Annette and see when she has time to sit in a demo with me. That way, we're on the same
Yeah,
page.
and I wanna throw out there, Chronos, they've had so many updates since we originally went live. And I don't keep up with all of them, I just can't. But with these consultants that we have that we're gonna bring in, I know that they've updated and upgraded their scheduling system in general. I've never seen the thing, I don't know exactly what it can do, but I feel like with consultants coming in, different consultants, they may be able to ease your burden that you have now without the additional, but I can't guarantee that. I just really, Chronos, it's simple. So that makes, it really is, from the end user standpoint, if it's set up correctly. And so,
The other question on power time is how are we going to get sign-offs on timesheets? That's a big one if we get a
well,
wage.
that's still gonna have to come from Chronos.
That's a wage and hour, that's the same thing, a wage and hour audit. If somebody comes in and audits your office, they're gonna go through those Chronos, and they're gonna look for sign-offs.
mean-
That's what we're working on right now to get everybody to do all their approvals.
Does
I don't know.
the power time, does that have like the time card and everything? Like you guys would be approving time cards? Okay.
So it passes all that, yes.
So it wouldn't come across without an approval.
It passes
So
all
one
that.
thing, when you come back, cost and your thoughts on how to merge the two, think about the staff's time, how much time, man hours you save by
Do you have any
doing that.
questions on?
That's just a good optic to have too, when you're trying to move and spend more money, yeah.
Let me ask this. So with this item, and this goes back to probably legal and the way the Financial Act set, does this have to go through the sub-policy committee or this decision on the interface and stuff? Does this have to go to the sub-policy committee or can it stay here?
Well, the first decision is, do we interpret that it violates the Chronos setup policy? If it doesn't, then you keep on trucking.
We can keep it at this table.
That's what I was,
Yeah.
my
Not-
question
okay.
seemed like,
If it passes all the information, I don't believe it does.
And to
Okay, very
me,
good.
what I see, if I was arguing this point, this is, what he's proposing is duplicative. It's
Yeah.
merely a second set of the same information.
Yeah.
So as long as it ends up in Chronos, I think you're fine.
And the only reason I
I thought-
asked that was I was going to, when we got to the Elected Officials Association, I was gonna recommend if they needed a different member or if they needed the minutes and stuff, that
You
we
just
would
think it
put the
does.
sheriff's
No, I
office
think
or
it passes all
EMS
the
on there
information.
to address this
I'm thinking
issue.
it does.
Hendersonville has mutes.
That's okay, but we don't need to.
And power time.
and he's already said it costs $11,000, so if it saves a full man or
Oh,
full
yeah.
woman
Hey,
job, that's one more person that, and to be completely honest, with my
Yeah, but you,
family and I did
you
a,
said that was a startup. It was 4,500 after,
4,500
Yeah.
a year after that.
yeah.
That 11
year after
includes-
that.
Right, so it's a recurring cost every year, just like every other software, and then there's the one-time setup fee.
Yeah. My family and I did a tour of the jail a couple of weeks ago, and I just want to compliment you on how fantastic your leadership is there. And it was shocking how understaffed things were, so we need people not doing paperwork, we need people doing all the value-added stuff. I think there was one guy manning all of the doors at the jail, and there's like 2 or 3 seats that should be filled. So I mean, these are real trade-offs, it seems like, that you guys are making.
So
So
when
if this frees up even one person, I mean, that's somebody else that can.
Let's be real how this works. You got one person that's upset about Chronos, what are they doing? They're texting their friends. So it just creates a productivity issue. I mean, not that this would be the absolute perfect thing, but if it moves you in that direction, I mean, yeah.
So we look forward to talking with you more next month on these items. If we could move forward, the mayor needs to leave at 4:30.
Sure.
So Do you have anything else to add right now? We'll talk more next time. All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
You don't want them to stick around?
Yeah, I'd like for him to, but I'd like to give the mayor an opportunity. We have some other items here. I'm not sure, you asked me which ones that,
The purchase order exceptions.
all right, I'd like to,
Let me go to those ones.
yeah. Can I ask you, before we jump down there, can we go to, without objection, old item C for requested minutes of the elected officials?
Yeah, we haven't met. We'll see if we can get a meeting.
Because we are, we're looking at having a subcommittee meeting,
Yeah,
and we don't have any minutes for that fifth member.
yeah, let me talk to the elected officials and see if we can get a meeting together pretty quickly.
All right, and just in case this item has to go to the sub-policy committee, I'd like to consider a fifth member coming from either EMS or the sheriff's office to discuss this issue, if y'all would consider that.
Sure.
So we'll go ahead and consider item C discussed. So jumping down to new business, sorry for all the jumping. Purchase and bid issues.
Let me go through them real quick.
Yes, sir.
On page 174 is your list of purchasing and bid issues. The first one, item 20, is the new one, and that's the Gallatin Department of Electricity. That's the one for the work done at the courthouse, and there wasn't a PO obtained between all the transitions, but when you read the policy on page number 3, it allows me to grant exceptions for something I consider legitimate other than just plain failure, and because it is a quasi-governmental agency, I considered it a governmental agency, so that's one that I granted. Item 23, I know I'm skipping, failure to obtain one because the mayor had a agreement with the church. They were to pay something, a reimbursement. The church asked us to pay directly, and the work had already been done, to, I guess, to get along with the church or to work with them. We just went ahead and did it, but it's the same thing on page number 3 allows me to grant exceptions.
What was it?
It was for some work. They were working on the courthouse, and there was an awning that was in the way of construction, so the county agreed to remove the awning for $8,100, and the mayor signed the agreement for them to pay it, the work, and we just reimbursed them, which wouldn't require a PO. They asked us to pay it to the vendor directly, and, it's really just kind of it for that. So I granted him exception on the PO because his belief was that they were gonna pay it. And then item 21 and 22 was 2 items where there was just a failure to obtain a PO, and the mayor does have corrective action sheets in there for both of them. The employee is no longer here. But I'm asking to grant exceptions for number 21 and 22.
Move to group and approve 21 and 22 for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Then can I discuss item 2 a little bit? Because it's also Veterans Park. The mayor was discussing with Veterans Park, the money is budgeted for work to be done out here before. The mayor didn't authorize it. They went ahead and proceeded with the work before a PO or anything was obtained. They did the work themselves. Since it is federal money, it is required to follow the rules for ARPA. It's considered a small purchase. It's under $10,000, so the work would not require 3 quotes or anything, but it should have required a PO. So since they didn't do that, if this committee will grant an exception and we put it in the minutes clearly, we can go ahead and obtain invoices from those folks and reimburse them if this committee would approve that to comply with 200 CFR. If you guys approve the exception, we can move forward.
What's the value of such? I mean, is there a dollar amount assigned to that?
It's over here on pages 205 to 215. The total work estimated or included is?
Total work was around $8,396.55. And then the Hendersonville City gave a grant of $2,500. That left a balance of $5896.55. And then the county agreed to pay $5,000 towards it. And unfortunately, or not unfortunately, they just don't know the system. And they went out and they were just, eager to get the work done and asked us to reimburse it. So
just
but I did talk to them about, hey, if you want something done, you bring a plan to me of what you want done, and then I present that for a funding opportunity.
I'll make the motion, we pay it.
It's on page 209, the
Yeah.
actual details, it's
Yeah.
50-some hundred. And I just request that you guys approve the exception, and the one caveat is that they provide all the detailed invoices. We've got most of them, we just need a few more.
So I'll second that. Do I have all in favor? Any opposed? And just a side note, is all the work completed?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's completed. I'll have to get with them and ask them.
Thank you.
Need anything else from me?
You may want to chime in on the discussion, I don't know, but nothing
Okay.
that directly to you.
I'll sit down for a few more minutes.
So we head right back up to old business, item B, list of grants and projects. I believe that's where we're at.
We are working on that, but I had Ms. Browning, she included an email right now. Between all the projects we're doing, that one's just nowhere near complete, and it's a time-consuming project.
Do we know if we have any grants that we haven't acted on that we should?
No, this is just the stuff in the system of, you kind of wanted an idea of the dollar and amounts, but that's gonna require quite a bit of time.
So those that, we're not leaving any money on the table?
No.
Okay.
We've got a good monitoring system on all that stuff, yeah.
This is just paper?
Yeah, this is basically the way the project structures look, and kind of the same thing we're saying, we're doing the most pressing projects, and that's why we really need another accountant to work on some of the stuff.
Can we get at least, we can come back next month and it'll be the same answer. I'm not putting the answer down. I know that's the answer on the table. But we're not gonna get an answer until July or August
On
because
which
of
one?
budget.
Right. Right now, we're working on it, but the thing is, we're working on other projects too that are quite pressing. And one is
So-
now the Title VI, so.
This is just, I would propose that we update budget on how many items are being pushed into no man's land over and over again.
I mean, that's kind of we shift when we get a new project or request. We work overtime as much as we can,
I
extra
understand.
hours, and we shift projects.
So, I make a motion that we move to the budget agenda for next month, a discussion on how far behind finance is on fulfilling the request of this committee.
Well, it's, like right now, the one we've moved people to is the one which we need to do the election commission, the benchmark.
Yeah, that's all fine.
We
I
moved
would just
over
like to make the
there
motion
and-
that we bring this to budget and we take the time to walk through all the outstanding items to request resources. Because we have committees, we have budget committee that can't get reports they need. We have this committee that can't get reports they
Which
need.
reports are they needing right now?
The, election office.
That's what we're working on for next month.
Right, I know, but it was a resource and we're
Right.
pulling you off a budget.
And
So
we'll-
my motion is that we send a request to budget that they entertain the list of items that's being pushed off and consider resources before budget.
So right now, I've allocated somebody over on the election. And
Can I
then-
get a second?
I'll second that.
Can we finish discussing the ones, we have allocated resources, they're just over there right now, working on it.
All I'm asking is for budget to go through the list of items that we're behind and consider applying more resources. If you can't use the resources,
The problem we've also, and this is one we're trying to discuss, anytime we bring a resource in, there's a lag between training them and getting them up. If we bring in full-blown accountants, they don't know the system, they don't know the time. It's the same issue we've got right now. We can only move so quickly. So right now is what I say, we have allocated people toward the election commission benchmarking. There's a request for the Monday, since they're discussing schools revenue, there's a request for the maintenance of effort for several years, and then we're also in the middle of an arbitrage rebate calculation, so those are allocations.
I'll withdraw my motion. I'll talk to Chairman Schoaf and I'll bring it to the budget committee. And we'll see. I understand it's hard to put these resources in, but we're just running around in circles.
Can we put that on the agenda for you to report back on what you learned? I just want David to have the right resources to get things done.
We have a lot of things that need done.
And you're having to kind of on the fly mitigate and understand what's the highest risk any particular day.
So I'd like to introduce a new topic, since this is financial management, we're talking about accounting resources. It's a topic that's going to start circulating more and more as we start talking about the replacement of our finance director as he goes into retirement in the next 16, 18 months. So
Set a date for retirement.
that will be the next thing that we're going to ask for is a
Before
firm.
June.
We're going to need, I mean, we can't hold you to it, but we're going to need a target.
It'll be on or before June 30, 2026.
So we'll need a little bit, if you could think about that. But what I'm looking at is we're going to need shadow time. So we're going to need resources to cover Mr. Lawing, an overlap, because we can't drop him off and then pick somebody up the next day. So we're going to be bringing in more resources to cover that at some point, and we're going to need to build that into the budget also. And if we're building in more resources, we need to look at that also at the same time.
I put in next year's budget right now for the request for 90 days, or 90 work days for an overlap during the year for a start salary of 185, because I think that's what it's going to take you to. That's where you're going to hit. Brown gave,
So
looking
if
at the market,
we're
maybe more.
looking for a replacement in 90 days, I propose,
For
and I'm
90
going to
days.
propose it
For 90 work days, 90
for
days.
90 work days, that if we stretch that out in the shadow, if we could pick up more time, maybe we could get some more resources towards some more of these items.
And then there's some logistics you've got to come over. The person's going to have a couple of requirements. They've got to be CPA with a certain amount of experience. They're going to be recommended by the mayor and agreed to by the county commission. So
I understand.
since I'll be leaving, say, in June 30 and we're overlapping, I'm sure if you're going to get anybody that's got a good job willing to come down here, because, you know, I'm going to be leaving, working with me, and then overlapping to the next, they're probably going to want a contract with an agreement some way that that's going to move into that direction at the end of the day, or they won't. If they've got a good
Yeah.
job, I would come. So
And
the
those
same thing,
are
you're going to have to work
discussions.
with the mayor to determine who the mayor's willing
Right,
to
and
recommend.
these are discussions, right now, all I'm saying is we're already looking at a block of 90 days for you a shadow next year.
90 work days, yeah.
But if we extend that, person, maybe we can pick up resource time to cover some of these others. Say if instead of 90 days, we brought them in for 180 days, then you could get some of these resources. You could become some of the resources to get these things done that we all need.
If you had them here 180 days or some long period,
That's
and
not a
basically
long
while I was
period.
training them, I would go over and work on Chronos and some of these issues you don't have.
That's
what I'm saying. the
That's what
day-to-day
I'm,
would be-
that's what I want to bring to everybody's
So
attention.
you would,
Problem
you
is
would
the
really
day-to-day
need
is
to
kind of
start
a
the
run.
search process right after we pass this budget.
Pretty much.
Yes, that's why I'm bringing it to the table for discussion.
But I mean, if you replace him, or you hire the replacement, and you're asking them to shadow for 6 months, I mean, you're gonna be paying that higher wage for that 6 months. So you're gonna pick up some additional cost. I mean,
Yes.
if you hired me to be your finance director, I'd say, why do I need 6 months to get up to speed on this job?
90 should be.
I mean,
But it isn't just 90 days. What I'm saying is then we could pull the additional resources and apply to these
yeah, I mean,
items that we're.
that for that interim period.
And
There's more
there's some
expensive
more
resources
things
there.
that we also need in the back end for budget and stuff that Mr. Lawing could do as the other person's coming on board. I just wanted to throw it out there so we can start seeing it as from a resource point.
Let me mention
And-
one more potential cost. It's according to how broadly you want to look. Because just like when we hired the first IT director, we actually hired a firm to help go hunt somebody. Right now, if you've looked at the AICPA, there's not an abundance of trained CPAs out there right now. They're worried
It's
about
gonna be a
15.
challenge. I mean, we gotta get started sooner than later.
So do you want to put money out for a recruiting firm? They're very expensive. They're going to get you a better result, but do you want to put that kind of money?
Well, I think you've got to consider all the options. I mean, the way you try to do it first is do it organically. If you find somebody that the mayor likes and has
And-
confidence in, and
And all I'm proposing now is that if we need 90 days of shadow, we could extend that to get more resources to these items that I'm wanting.
But now I'm going into
Resources.
Plan B is
Yeah.
what's the process?
Yeah. Well, we can start, we
And
can
it's
start talking
usually-
now. We got a little bit of time.
Yeah, but.
To me, you'd go organically first before you spend money on a search firm, see if you've got somebody
Yeah.
that you want to.
I will say, when David was hired, that was about a 6-month process, 6, 7 months from when we started looking till he came in the door.
Well, David's slow, we understand that.
No, that's to find me. I didn't have any overlap.
I mean, that's how long it took though to get somebody
Thank you,
in
Mayor.
from when we
Thank
started
you.
looking. So it's not like you can wait till October, November, December and start looking, thinking we're gonna have somebody in here
Yeah.
in a month or two.
I think we gotta look as soon as this budget's over.
Yeah,
be
and like I
active.
said, all I'm saying is that I would like to extend those resources to maybe take care of some of these other things.
And I'm saying our plans is right now, looks very promising to say at the end of June, but to be honest with you, I have with my sick time this month, 30 years right now. So, I mean, I have enough time to retire like at any time,
So,
so.
if you could, like, we can't hold you to anything, but if you could give us something in the next couple of,
Big
you know,
thing.
after budget, if
I
you
mean,
could
that's
give
big
us a
decision, so we're not
something.
asking you to do it
Uh,
today, but, I mean, and
and
also
so-
after your retirement, if we need services, what would you be available to help us? But,
So,
When I came in, there wasn't, the county was smaller, but there wasn't a real overlap. It would have been very helpful to find stuff, what was going on.
yeah.
and,
And things are probably, I'd say, more organized than we were then, so we're pretty well
and
organized.
if I could pull us back to the items. So as far as grants and projects goes, we're not gonna get anything on that until after budget, or after year
Well,
close.
we're gonna run you a listing and try to straighten them up, is what we're gonna do, but you wanted to
Okay.
overlap the amount of each one, we're gonna have to manually do that, that's the issue we're running into.
So if you could just give us a
Very-
project update next month.
And honestly, we may, as soon as we get these projects done, I may be able to move another person over there to work on that, that's kind of where we're
All
at.
right.
And we're
So-
running out of overtime too.
We move on to the item C, requested minutes, we've discussed that. Item D, a payroll item salary survey.
That's one where we discussed, and we can drop the data and send it to the salary survey individual and have her to work directly with the departments. That was when you guys kind of decided to wait off. We don't know where you want to run. I got a quote of what it was to update it back in the budget. I don't know if the quote's still valid or if there's more cost.
What do you think the time frame with that would be? Would they get in here in time for,
I can email her in the morning and find out.
just let me know.
Make myself a note.
So we'll just leave this on old business. Next time you'll come back with a cost and a time frame.
Yeah, I want to make
I
that note.
think, if I can interject here, we keep dancing around this since I've been here, and to me, the bigger question is, what are y'all gonna do with it when you get it?
Yeah.
Depends on how it comes, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, but what's your goal here? Because I'm sitting here seeing, I'm trying to, for example, when I was hiring my paralegal, I got a paralegal, I had to beg to get at the rate they're at to see people going to the sheriff's department as a data processor getting 10 grand less.
I'd like to know what the salary survey does, if it can give us job categories.
They did last
They
time.
did
They'll be
last
updated.
time.
And if we could come up with something, you know, we saw that schedule from Rutherford County.
We had one of these here last time. It's like that I created
There's a
one.
full one, and
I've got one
that's
here.
where I keep
It's
going, all right,
outdated.
we keep getting this thing, what are we gonna do?
I would have to have legislation
Do you want,
adopt to the policy to use it, but then that's a lot of buy-in.
my big thing right now, do you want me to email her
That's my
tomorrow?
whole, so you're gonna spend this kind of money, salary surveys aren't cheap.
It's,
If you keep running them, what are you gonna do with them is my
Because we
only,
keep running them and doing
and as a
nothing.
citizen, you know.
The prior commission ran it and did nothing.
well, they gave some,
Did
they,
they implement it?
Not bad, but.
they gave several raises on the last one, but it's not been updated for, I think, going on 4 years right now. That's the problem. So if you're gonna look at where your people fall within the ranges, you need to get them to do it and then make a set of ranges and just drop them all in and see where they're at. But you may or may not like the results. That's what Eric's saying. Are you gonna act on the results when you get them? Is the question. And you guys have done quite a bit of adjustments, so they may be within market pretty well now. You may like the results.
We still need a cost and a time frame.
I'll call. What do you want though? Do you want a full-blown scale? So I'll tell her that's a little more. She was given the classifications and the upper and outer ranges on both ends. If you wanted some other kind of scale, I can tell her tomorrow too. What did you guys have in mind? Or if I get hold of her.
Thoughts? What do y'all think we need?
I mean, market salary data is just one small data point when it comes to hiring, when it comes to compensation, when it comes to planning. It's necessary, but it's a very small.
I mean, can they take our current salary base and pressure test it to see if we're in range on?
The pressure test is the market. You have
Right.
massive turnover, and I think we had a problem with
Well, we've got
turnover.
turnover, so we
But then
failed
we had
that
a
test.
problem a couple of years ago, and it sounds like it's maybe slowed down a little bit.
Well, it slowed down some. What we've got, what we had last time, I think it was 1 through 14, we had 14 different ranges, and then the upper and lower scale, and then the midpoint. I think what Terry maybe wanted to see is the upper, the bottom, the midpoint, and see based if you spread it over 20 years where people drops compared if you just did 20, something of that nature. Is that what you're wanting to see? Kind of the
I
really
really liked and found it useful to look at Rutherford where they had all the job categories.
plot on 20. Well, we have the same thing, said it wasn't plotted across.
But
20
I don't
years.
know, and if the mayor was here, I could ask him, and, I don't know if the elected officials would be happy with that. I mean, I can see pushback on that.
I remember when we were talking about this last year in budget, we were wanting to try and have it right about in March.
Mhm. Then we
Because we
dropped back.
wanted it prior to the budget cycle.
And it was dropped back to decide to do it budget, and then I think we decided you decided to slow down on it right now, but I can contact her in the morning, and she was just gonna basically update the one, it's got the 14 things in the mid and all the stuff you're talking about, it's just 4 years old. So what she was gonna do is update for the market and for new positions. And then we could take that back to you, and you could do whatever you wanted to. If you wanted to take that upper and bottom and dot it across 20 and compare them, not a hard process.
That's for each category of employees.
I think there was, if I recall properly, I think there was 14 different job categories from, the
I
most
think that would
skilled
be
all the way
kind of
down.
exactly what we're looking for.
We had that back, it's 4 years old right now, so it's very,
But she would bring it
Right.
today. Okay.
and I have a quote in there, and I think it may or may not be more or less now. I can find out from her tomorrow.
There's always a trailing data because you can't get it as of today. A 1 to 2 year lag anyway, but 4 years does seem quite a bit. Why is it 4 years old?
Because we haven't done an update since then. It was not the current county commission, but the county commission before, and I can't recall if it was their last year or the year one before that.
But if she has a category of employee and can bring it up to kind of real time, I think that gets us where we need to go.
Yeah.
But to your point, what are you gonna do with it? What if you find a band of those that are way under market, are you gonna adjust
We
their
have
salary?
both. We have some low and we have some high. We already know this. I mean, this is
Or are they in
no,
a proper category?
and we have
That's
some,
the-
and
that's the big
that's the
question.
big question.
Yeah, they're hard to
And
get
then
them.
how to get them in the proper one.
It's hard to
Um,
put an individual in a bucket like that.
But once we get
Proficiency
it,
to
as we go
official
forward,
knowledge.
then we can hire for the category. You know.
It's
if
a
we
good
can-
reference point, I totally
Yeah.
agree. I think whatever the cadence is, just we need to decide the cadence and refresh it. If it's 4 years, great. If it's 5 years, great. If it's
And,
18 months, great. I don't have any point in that, but it shouldn't be the hallmark of when you hire and pay people should not be market salary data.
And I'm sorry to throw this in at y'all, and I realize I was gonna just say I needed to leave because I have a community event I'm expected at as an official. But if I leave, we're out of
Do we
quorum.
need to table anything for next meeting?
Yeah.
Jimmy, go through things really quick. There's only one or two
I
left.
know.
Almost done.
She's gonna-
I got 5 o'clock.
You got to 5 o'clock to be out or 5?
I need to be there at 5.
Well,
It's not far away.
Yeah, there's only 3 things.
Okay, let's do it quickly.
Jimmy, do Chronos bids?
Yes.
Go to page 126, and I have another handout that actually has the summary. And there was 2 bids, and right now we're talking about another interface, so I'm not sure how that would affect it, but
We got it all.
These are my voters I'm going to see.
But when we went down to the details
To
of
work
the,
for. Yes, sir, sorry.
when we went down to the details of the 2 bids, the JK7 Inc. has a lot more experience in telestaff is what we really need for EMS. They bid a total for the engagement of 135, but it's broken pieces. And when you go down to the details, what they had bid on the pieces was for the EMS to fix the telestaff and get the EMS ready for upload would be $76.5. The sheriff we're looking at is work as you go, so it would be $185 an hour, whatever we need done. To do ECC and highway, ECC was $21.6 and highway was $32.4. And then we're
on the
thinking
wrong
probably, I'm just going through some of the details.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
The one that had the most experience is the Seva Inc. And they got 130,500 in there, and to kind of give you the details of what all's made up in there. There was 76 500 for EMS, ECC's 21.6, highways 32.4 to make up those numbers. What we think would probably be the best fit if we're gonna try to get Kronos ready for upload is to engage them probably starting this month. For EMS for the 76.5, work with the telestaff, work with their system and try to get change management done with them and start uploading those folks. Probably need at $185 an hour, somewhere below the remainder of the $100,000 to get the sheriff. We also got to figure out about the integration on this new system. And then look at next year doing ECC and highway, which ECC was 21.6 and highway is 32.4. And then maybe about 10,000 for miscellaneous because we could complete the other smaller departments entirely.
So all the numbers that you've articulated, what do they add up to?
Well, if you take the 76 and the 21.6 and the
Come up with
32, comes to the 13500, and then we're thinking we probably need about another 20,000 or so for the sheriff if we're going to reconfigure and do all his uploads, and then probably about 10,000 in miscellaneous because of the hourly quotes that
About 160,000.
about 160 to complete the project.
So was that 20,000 for the sheriff, is that for his new software?
No, that would be to reconfigure all the programming he's wanting people to change paid from schedule, then we gotta look at the CTRs. The same problem we're gonna run into, the problem we got with the sheriff is they're not, and they're doing much better, is they're all not signing off on their timesheets.
Okay.
So if they stop signing off on their timesheets, we don't have any guarantee they're correct. Well, there's a lot of changes also being made after the sign-offs because of missed punches and times. That's what's causing the issue of why we can't directly upload them. So the lady over his department is basically creating an Excel sheet, comparing all those exceptions and trying to fix them.
Her spreadsheet is literally, she pulls a data view, she copies,
Right.
and she pastes. So I'm not sure where they're.
So we're at 160. Where is the money coming from?
We got 100 in the budget this year, so if you did it this year, the 76.5 for EMS and then about 20 for sheriff, so they get you in the budget. And then next year, we're talking bringing the budget down to 64, that same line.
Gotcha.
Completing it, at that point, having completion with the big ones, and then come back next year, discuss this holdback period and pull in all these little ones after we fix the holdback.
So what are you asking for from the committee?
To approve us to go ahead and engage them to do the EMS on and on an ad need basis to help us complete the sheriff's department if he's want to move forward.
So what you're talking about is the 100K?
Somewhere below the 100K is in the budget.
Okay. So what I would propose, Madam Chairman, is that we move forward with the 100K, articulate that in the minutes, what we're trying to accomplish, but also indicate that there's another 60 that will need to be moved to next year.
It's JK7 Inc. the one we're recommending.
Did this one have a guarantee in it?
Guarantee of
That
what?
they would complete on time, or did it have overage?
There's all kind of things in the RFQ and the
Oh,
estimates.
yeah.
They'll, by looking at them, we think they'll do a good
Okay,
job.
that's not-
The problem you're gonna run into is if they give a guarantee, it's based upon cooperation from the department. So if we run into a lot of issues with the departments, they're gonna keep a record of it, bills at 185 an hour, which actually 185 an hour is pretty cheap for any firm I've hired for anything. And that's probably pretty much market. This one was 185 an hour, the other one was 165 for one thing and 185 for the other. That's why this one's 180 an hour, so it's pretty well, it's 180.
So if we move forward with this vendor at 100K, that gets you off and running, and at budget, we can reassess whether 60K is the right number.
Right. I'd say request the 60K and then until we get EMS and get the sheriff resolved, don't go forward with them with anything else. We understand we're contracting for the 100 with the potential for this work in the future if it works out in the budget and moving forward.
And I
We
don't
gotta see
want,
progress right now, that's the big
I don't
one.
want a lot of information, but this contract here, it fixed our parameters in Coronas
And tell us staff for EMS.
and tell us staff at EMS. Will it also, I denoted some talk about retraining that we needed because they had been trained before and the training apparently wasn't correct.
For the EMS.
Will this include training?
For EMS.
For EMS, but not
For
for sheriff.
EMS,
You know,
but not-
EMS has telestaff that wasn't trained. So the thing is, it's
I mean, it sounds like a step forward. I'm good about it.
It's 180 an hour, so if we need something to
We
help
get
us,
started in the right
we can get
direction.
them going that direction. But I'm saying do this step, and then if they're successful, work well, we get these off the ground, complete upload like we want with EMS, then we move forward. If
Move
they can't,
forward.
then
So you may have a motion?
I'll make a motion, 100K.
So,
Second, the motion to,
Move
To accept the
forward with
recommendation.
JKC, the Inc.
See the Inc. for
Spending-
100K,
spending $100,000
reevaluate our
allocated
budget.
for this year.
Yeah.
So basically, we're approving this budget
And
and
100K.
spending the money we've already.
Yeah.
If they're successful, hopeful future ventures, if not, we'll.
Yeah.
yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Vendor is approved.
And I think item G is a much larger discussion, you probably want to table, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman. 'Cause-
Make a motion to table item G.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? G is tabled. New business was completed.
What about it?
I guess I skipped it. Oh, there it is, the purchase card.
I have the purchasing department working on those right now.
Yes.
She's been pulling them and looking at them and looking at limits and trying to average them out, so she's still working on it.
Item F, make a motion to move it to old business next time. Get a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Did I skip any more? We've skipped all over this agenda. So sorry.
I think you caught it all.
All right. Excellent.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Thank you, gentlemen.
Harry, I can give you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Do you have anything to add to us?